The house wasn't big. 3 bedrooms, modest porch, a yard that needed taming every other week. But it was mine, not rented, not borrowed, bought. Brick by brick, payment by payment. Every dollar I saved working overtime, every lunch I skipped at the office, every piece of furniture I didn't buy just so I could close that deal. No help, no shortcuts, just me. People don't clap when you're building. They show up for the ribbon cutting, not the sweat. And in my case, no one even showed up for that. Mama said she was tired, and Lurleen, well, she'd been going through something. Always was. So I stood alone on that driveway, holding my keys, smiling through the ache that felt like it shouldn't still be there. They say success has many fathers, I remember whispering. Mine didn't. I had one name on that loan, mine. I didn't buy that house to prove anything. But maybe deep down, I needed it to mean something. In a town like Mobile, a single woman owning property in her 30s, it turns heads, people talk. Some admire, others assume you must have had a handout. They never consider you just worked harder. A few months in, I'd just started settling, routines, rhythms, morning walks in the backyard with coffee. And then she showed up. Lurleen, on my porch, 2 bags and a story. She'd lost her job. Something about downsizing. Then the apartment. Landlord gave no notice, she said, eyes already brimming like she rehearsed it on the drive. Just a place to land, she mumbled, just for a bit. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her. At the duffel with the busted zipper, at her shoes, those same wedges from 3 Thanksgivings ago. She looked smaller. Maybe that was what did it. You remember when I had the chicken pox? She asked, soft. I did. She slept on my floor for 2 weeks, read to me from those old Reader's Digest books when Mama was too busy. That memory had weight. It tilted me. Come in, I said, and she was already stepping over the threshold. We weren't close, not the way people think sisters are. We'd been allies during Daddy's stroke, survivors of Mama's sharp tongue. But allies aren't always friends, and trauma doesn't equal trust. Still, I wanted to be the good sister, the reliable one, the one who didn't say no, and I told myself it was temporary. A few weeks in, my mortgage broker reached out. There was a new refinancing program, lower rates, better terms. I needed a second name on the paperwork for the restructure to fly. Lurleen offered. Just to help you get that rate, she smiled. It's just paperwork. We're family. I hesitated. Something in my gut pinched. But I also remembered what people used to say, that I was too guarded, that I didn't know how to let people in. Maybe they were right. Just temporary, I said. Of course, she nodded. Zeta, my friend from college who now worked in real estate law, caught wind of it. She texted me one sentence that stayed with me. Don't let people in just because they know which buttons to press. That's not love. That's leverage. I brushed it off. Zeta was jaded. This was family. The day we signed, Lurleen wore lipstick. That's how I knew she wanted it to feel official. I didn't read the fine print, didn't ask questions I should have. I wanted to be easy, cooperative, kind. Weeks passed. She cooked sometimes, watered the lawn when I forgot. I almost let myself believe we'd figured something out, grown into sisterhood late. Then the shift started. The lawn guy said he'd be by Friday, she said one evening. I told him we'd prefer Saturday. Or to the neighbor across the street. We just love the morning light in the kitchen, don't we? The third time she used our house, I paused. She noticed. Just habit, she laughed. You know what I mean. And I wanted to. I wanted to believe she was just settling in, feeling safe, finally secure. But something in me twitched. That night, I stood by the key rack near the front door, the one she hung her car keys on, right next to mine. I stared at the spare I'd given her. Tiny, shiny, identical to mine. And I remembered something Daddy once said after patching a door frame I'd slammed as a teenager. Locks don't keep out bad people, he told me, wiping sweat from his brow. They just keep honest folks honest. That night, I slept light. A week later, she got a call, unknown number. Her smile shifted when she saw it. She walked outside to answer, her voice hushed behind the glass door. She didn't come back for 45 minutes. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. But that key by the front door? It glinted different now. The first crack wasn't in the foundation. It was in the silence after I handed her the spare key. It was small things at first. She started moving the furniture around. Nothing major, just angling the couch differently, shifting the kitchen table so it caught the light in the morning. I came home one afternoon to find my favorite reading chair in the guest room. She smiled and said, "It just felt more balanced this way." She answered the door when I wasn't home. She greeted delivery drivers with, "You can leave it at the Holloway residence." That stung more than I let on. It wasn't the name, my name, that bothered me. It was the way she said it, like it belonged to her too. Mail started coming in with her name. Some addressed to Lurleen Holloway, some just to resident. Zeta noticed it first when she stopped by. She picked up a flyer and held it a little too long. "She living here now?" she asked, eyes not moving from the envelope. I just nodded. "She's trying to feel settled again, that's all." I said it out loud like I believed it, but I didn't. Then came the letter. It arrived with the usual pile: ads, bills, catalogs I never signed up for. Thin white envelope, city seal. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter, coffee half drunk, toast untouched. Confirmation of change of primary residency. It had my name, and hers, and someone else's. Truett Holloway. I stared at the name, lips pressed tight. I didn't know a Truett. Hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to anything. The date on the form was from a week ago. I called the city office, sat through the menu, pressed 3 for property inquiries. A woman named Clarice picked up, too chipper for 9 a.m. She pulled up the file and confirmed it was submitted online with digital signatures. Digital signatures. "You must have done it through the portal," she said. "It's common these days." "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "I didn't." I hung up. My fingers went cold. I opened my laptop, logged into my property tax portal. Email, mortgage account. I hadn't checked in a while. Everything had looked fine, until now. That's how things work. They look fine, until they don't. A war started inside me. One voice said, "She wouldn't do this to you." The other whispered, "She already has." I didn't sleep much that night. Tossed. Thought about every small thing I'd brushed off. Every gut nudge I ignored. Next morning, I called the mortgage company, said I was just updating some records and wanted to confirm recent activity. "Actually, yes," the agent said. "There was a pre-approval request last month. We emailed it to you. Signature came back the next day." "I didn't sign anything," I said. There was a pause. "Well, we do have a signature on file. I can email you the scanned copy." I waited. Didn't move. When it came through, I opened it immediately. It looked like mine. Almost, but the slant was off. The loop in the D wasn't mine. The tail of the N curved wrong. Close enough to pass. Wrong enough to burn. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat very still, hands in my lap, back straight like I was sitting in church. I thought about the time I let her handle the bills when I was sick. It was flu season. I'd been out for 3 days straight, shivering under blankets, while she brought soup and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." I'd thanked her. I'd meant it. Now I wondered what else she'd taken care of. I pulled out my filing box. Every document I had from when I bought the house. Receipts, closing documents, ID scans. I compared them side by side. Timestamps, email trails, login histories. She hadn't just stumbled into this. She planned it. And while I was lying in bed, fevered and trusting, she had been positioning her name next to mine. This wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal with patience. I looked around the room, the furniture she'd shifted, the key on the hook by the door, the light bulbs she replaced without asking. She hadn't been helping. She'd been settling in. That night, I changed every password, but it was already too late. The envelope was thinner than usual. County seal, top left corner. No frills, no color, just that stark label. Final notice, updated deed confirmation. I was standing at the kitchen counter, mail in one hand, still warm coffee in the other. It took me a second to realize the letter wasn't a duplicate bill or some generic notice. My name was there, but right underneath it, hers. And another one, Truett Holloway. I didn't know a Truett. I hadn't signed anything with him. I hadn't signed anything new at all. I dropped my coffee into the sink, barely noticing the splash that hit the wall. My hands were already on the drawer where I kept every house document I'd ever received. Purchase forms, title deeds, closing contracts, all of it. My signature was always the same, tight, sharp, a little tilt on the D. This one, too smooth, like it had been traced over or copied. I picked up the phone and called Zeta. She answered on the second ring. "D? I think I've been robbed," I said, quiet. "And the worst part? They did it in ink." She didn't laugh, just said, "It's time you lawyer up, D." I didn't sleep that night. A few days before that envelope landed, Lurleen had invited me to dinner, casual. "You haven't met Truitt yet, have you?" she asked, like it was just some small-talk oversight, like she'd mentioned him before and I'd forgotten. I hadn't, but I played along. We met at this little Italian place downtown, one of those spots that tries too hard with mood lighting and expensive bread. Truitt showed up 15 minutes late, shaking off excuses like rain. He wore a fitted suit, too polished for Mobile. He smiled big, teeth blinding, and shook my hand like he was sealing a deal. I remember thinking, this man negotiates everything, including the way he sits down. Over breadsticks, he talked about shared visions and stability planning. I asked what he did, and he dodged it like it was a sport. "I'm between firms," he said, "but opportunities are lining up." When I mentioned refinancing, he perked up. "Oh yeah, I've seen the numbers. It's a great asset." He didn't look at me when he said that. He looked at my purse, my keys on the table, my ring finger, empty. I left that dinner with a tight chest and a sharper mind. So when I marched into the county office with that envelope in hand, I wasn't naive anymore. I was angry. The woman behind the desk pulled up the file, smiled like it was just another Tuesday. "Everything looks in order. Notary verified, signature received, public posting complete." I asked to see the file. She handed it over, my name, hers, and his, but the signature, the E at the end of Holloway, curved backward. I've never written it that way, not once, not in school, not on leases, not on job forms. Never. That little loop betrayed the whole thing. I asked for the notary's name, called them. They barely remembered. Young couple brought the docs in, said the third signer had the flu and couldn't make it. We did it per request. Standard exception form. Standard exception. Back at the clerk's desk, I stood frozen. The woman shrugged like it was weather. "This happens more than you'd think." It shouldn't. I drove home with both hands on the wheel like they were keeping me grounded. I didn't blast music or call anyone. I just kept thinking about that backwards loop, how one letter could unravel everything. When I got home, I didn't even take off my shoes. I pulled every document I had from every drawer, every email, every backup folder. I opened a spreadsheet and started logging. Dates, names, signatures, slants, notary stamps, where things didn't match, where the rot had begun. I saw it then, not as betrayal from a loved one, but as strategy from a rival. Lurleen hadn't made a mistake. She'd played a move. Truitt had been part of it. And I'd been asleep at the wheel. Holding open the gate, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years, my just-in-case file, scans of the original purchase, deed history, my signature, over and over, like echoes of a woman who trusted ink more than people. I remember Daddy once told me, "The truth doesn't scream, it stands." I stared at the real signature, the real date, the real paperwork, the real me, and I thought, let's see if the truth can hold this house up one more time. The next morning, I called 3 people, my lawyer, a locksmith, and the bank fraud department. I showed up to Mama's house out of obligation, not desire. Sunday dinners had become a tradition I could stomach in small doses, long enough to chew through bland roast and even blander small talk. But this time, I came with questions, and not the kind you sprinkle over salad. The minute I stepped through the door, I saw him, Truitt, sitting at the table like he belonged there, arms slung around the back of Lurleen's chair. She laughed too loudly at something he whispered, ignoring the stiffness in my jaw as I slid into my seat across from them. Mama clapped her hands once. "Let's eat before it gets cold." The food was warm, but the room sure wasn't. Lurleen passed the biscuits and said, like it was nothing, "We've been settling in real nice, haven't we, baby?" She glanced at Truett like they shared a secret. My fork paused mid-air. Mama coughed, then asked if anyone had tried that new diner on Government Street. I didn't answer. Neither did anyone else. When the sweet tea was poured and the air had thinned to a single thread of patience, I put my fork down. "We need to talk. Now." The words dropped like a coin in a silent church. Chairs scraped. Mama looked between us, helpless. Lurleen didn't say a word, just rolled her eyes and followed me out to the backyard. We stood near the fence line, the pecan tree behind us. I handed her a copy of the document. Co-ownership? With him? My voice wasn't raised, but it cracked like dry wood. She barely glanced at the paper. "So what?" she said. "You left me no choice." "No choice?" I echoed. "Lurleen, you forged my name." She shrugged. "You've always had everything. I've had scraps." I took a step back, not because I was scared, because I needed distance from the sound of that lie being told like truth. I earned everything I have. I worked for it. She smiled. "He's not stealing. He's correcting history." That line, those 5 words, cut deeper than a betrayal ever could. Because now it wasn't about deception, it was about rewriting what was mine into something owed. Behind the kitchen window, Truett leaned against the sink, sipping tea like he was watching a soap opera. I turned away before I said something that couldn't be unsaid. Memories pushed their way in without permission. The Christmas daddy gave me a bike, a red one with ribbons. Lurleen cried for 3 days because it wasn't a matching one. Mama said, "Let her ride it too. You've got 2 legs. Don't be selfish." The time I won that science fair ribbon, and Mama patted Lurleen's hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetie. You'll shine someday." Every piece of pride I'd ever earned was treated like a shared resource, something I was expected to divide, even when I'd barely had enough for myself. Lurleen hadn't taken just my house. She took the idea that I had the right to keep anything without guilt. I looked her in the eye. "This is where our paths split." She snorted. "What, you gonna sue me? Take me to Judge Judy?" I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "I'm going to take back what's mine, and I won't have to lie or steal to do it." I walked past her, didn't look back. The back door creaked when I opened it. Mama and Truett had vanished from the kitchen. Good. That night, I didn't sleep. I acted. I called every utility company, logged into every shared account, changed every password, locked every access point. Every service with her name on it got a cancellation notice. No explanations, no warnings, just closed doors. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. And just when I thought her words were the cruelest thing she'd throw at me, she proved me wrong. I didn't want to go. But Mama called twice that morning, then left a voicemail that sounded more like a sermon. "We need to talk, just mother to daughter. This family's been through enough." I could hear the clink of her spoon stirring sweetener into her coffee cup, like guilt had a rhythm. So I showed up. We met at the diner off Broad Street, same one we always did. Worn booths, burnt coffee, the waitress who called everyone, "Un." Mama was already seated, her Bible folded on the table like it might jump in if things got heavy. She smiled too wide. "You look tired, baby. This thing's weighing on you." I didn't respond, just took my seat and waited. "You've always been the strong one," she started. "You know that. Always kept your head down, got your own. I admire that." Compliment with a hook. I knew the dance. But strength. Sometimes it means letting things go, too. Not dragging our name through the dirt. Your daddy's name. That house. It's a house. Your sister's your sister. She just wanted to feel safe. Safe? After lying, forging, inserting herself into legal documents like it was a game? "If you burn it all down now," she said, real quiet, "what does that make you?" I sipped my coffee. It tasted like ash. That afternoon, I wandered through the aisles of the grocery store without buying anything. I needed noise around me, clinking carts, beeping scanners, anything but my own thoughts bouncing in a quiet kitchen. Later that week, the town hosted a community event, silent auction, booths, local church folks trying to raise money for a new roof. I showed up to support a friend. Didn't expect to see Lurleen. She was at the registration table, chatting with a volunteer. All smiles. A voice I knew too well when she was performing. And Truitt handled the paperwork, she said, since I was out sick during that time. Laugh. Toss of hair. He's good with that stuff. My body stopped moving before my mind did. Sick. I was never sick. Not during that time. Not even close. The volunteer looked at me and said, "Oh, I thought y'all had worked all that out by now." Lurleen caught herself. Her smile twitched, then vanished. She muttered something and walked off fast. Scripted. Rehearsed. But sloppy. Later that night, I sat with Zeta. We shared fries in her driveway like high school kids. Told her about the forged documents, the sickness lie, Mama's speech, all of it. She leaned back against the headrest and sighed. She tried the same thing with me, years ago. Wanted me to co-sign a lease, claimed her landlord was harassing her. Whole mess. You never told me. I didn't think it mattered. She didn't get what she wanted, so it just faded. I sat with that, the heaviness of repetition, of patterns I hadn't seen because I didn't want to. She knows how to use pity like a scalpel, Zeta said. Cuts right where you won't see the blood until later. I thought about my cousin Calvin, his truck gone after helping Lurleen with some paperwork. Said she needed a favor. Next thing he knew, the title was transferred and she was nowhere to be found. Was I ever her sister? Or just her easiest mark? Back home, I pulled out everything. Bills, emails, contracts, timestamps. I sat on the floor with sticky notes and highlighters like I was building a case, not reclaiming a life. And maybe I was, because this wasn't family drama anymore. It was fraud with a family discount. I labeled folders, timeline, evidence, lies. I matched dates to emails, highlighted inconsistencies, saved voice memos where her story shifted ever so slightly. I stopped crying about it. Stopped asking why. I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for patterns. By the time the sun came up, my wall looked like something out of a crime show, red string connecting events. Paper trails tacked to corkboard, except there was no detective coming, no rescue team, just me. But this time, I didn't feel like the victim. I felt like the one drawing the line. I gave her grace. Now I give her consequences. I wasn't done losing things, but I was done losing them quietly. It started with a call to the locksmith, but that came later. The first gut punch was when I called a contractor to install a new security system. Just something small, motion lights, maybe a camera over the back door. He asked for the address. I gave it to him. Then came his pause. Just need the owner's permission to move forward, he said. I am the owner. Another pause, longer this time. He cleared his throat. Well, county database lists Truitt Holloway and Lurleen Holloway as primary title holders. Want me to send you a screenshot? No, I said, hanging up before I could hear his tone shift from confusion to pity. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stood in the kitchen and looked around. Every light switch she'd touched, every drawer she'd reorganized, every plant he'd brought home and stuck in my windowsill. I whispered it aloud, like it was some confession I hadn't dared speak before. This is not my home anymore. Not legally. And now? Not emotionally either. I walked to the table where I'd kept every piece of paper, every email, every record. I opened my laptop and clicked the folder I'd been quietly building. Contingency. I pulled out the hard copies. Forgery folder, timeline, witness notes, photos, screenshots, printouts of every bank statement, every signature, every invoice that carried my name, until suddenly it didn't. Then I called my lawyer. We're not suing, I said. We're selling. He hesitated. Delston, that's risky. You're technically still on the original deed, but the paperwork after, I know, but I also know how to close doors. And I'm closing this one. He didn't push. Zeta put me in touch with a private buyer, someone looking for a fast close, cash on hand, no questions. I met him once. Kind eyes, tight handshake, firm voice. Said his wife wanted something move-in ready but didn't care about renovations. I said, "She'll have a clean start here." He didn't ask why I was leaving. I liked that. Over the next week, I prepared. Quietly, I packed only what was mine. No photos with Lurleen, no shared dishes. I marked boxes with one rule. If it could be disputed, it stayed. On closing day, they were gone. Out of town, some cousin's birthday, I think. I hired a moving company to handle the rest. No fuss. I watched the men carry out each box, then followed behind them, room by room, making sure nothing lingered. An hour before the signing, the locksmith arrived. New locks, new codes, fresh keys. I stood on the porch while he worked, arms crossed. I didn't flinch when he handed me the new set. At the lawyer's office, the papers were already on the table. I signed without ceremony, watched as the file was uploaded and the notification dinged on my phone. Transfer confirmed. No champagne, no relief, just a whisper. That was mine. Now it's no one's. By dusk, I was out. I checked into a short-term rental across town. White walls, sparse furniture, clean. It smelled like lemon-scented silence. 2 days later, I got a text from Mr. Purley, the neighbor across the street. "They're back," it said, "and they're losing it." I didn't respond. But I watched the security footage sent to my email, footage Zeta had helped me access remotely before the locks changed. There they were, banging, yelling, police lights flickering, voices rising, but the officer kept it simple. Title's clean. You're not the owner. That night, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Lurleen's voice, full of venom and panic. "What did you do, Delston? You think you can just wipe us out like we're garbage? You think this makes you better?" I saved the file, labeled it emotional evidence. I didn't play it again. I sat in my new kitchen with a cup of tea, letting the quiet stretch out like a warm blanket over a bruised body. They'd been playing chess with my life. I'd just made my move, and I didn't need to gloat. But Truitt wasn't done, and he didn't like being outplayed. 2 days after the sale went through, my phone buzzed around 6:47 in the morning. It was a message from Mr. Purley across the street. "There's chaos at your old house. You might want to see this." Attached was a short video clip, no sound, just shaky footage from his doorbell camera. Lurleen was pounding her fists against the front door, screaming something you didn't need audio to understand. Her mouth was twisted. Her whole body moved like it was running on panic. Truitt was standing a few feet back, pacing, phone in hand. He pointed up at the porch camera and shouted directly at it. Then he turned to someone off camera, still shouting. I couldn't hear it, but I could read lips well enough. "This is ours," he screamed. I watched it 3 times, no emotion in my face. I just stared, breathed slow, saved the file. Then I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and labeled it Volatile Behavior. 3 hours later, a new email landed in my inbox. Subject line, "You'll understand one day." It was from Lurleen. I knew what it would say before I opened it. Still, I read every word. "I never wanted to hurt you. You've always had everything. I just wanted a place to finally feel safe. Can't you see what he was trying to protect us from? We were just scared." The manipulation was so thin it barely masked the contempt beneath. She didn't regret the theft. She regretted being caught. I didn't waste energy on a long reply. I wrote, "I understand now, and I'm glad I do." Then I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Later that evening, I met with her and Zeta in a private office behind her law firm. It smelled like printer toner and lemon oil, comforting in its own way. We watched the footage together, played the voicemail she'd left, reviewed the email. Zeta looked over at me and said, "You've got enough here to destroy them publicly." I shook my head. "Let them keep screaming. The louder they get, the more credible I become. I don't need to drag them through the mud. They're doing it just fine on their own." We began to solidify the paper trail. Made sure every signature was time-stamped, backed up, notarized. I checked my asset defense folder 3 times that night. Triple-checked, no gaps, no loopholes. "They think this is a game of noise," I said, closing the folder. "But I win with quiet." The next morning, I drove across town to see Daddy. The nurses knew me by now. They smiled, buzzed me through. He was sitting in his recliner, feet up, blanket over his knees. "Hey, Daddy," I said, showing him the clip of Lurleen screaming at a door she no longer owned. He watched it once, didn't ask to see it again. Instead, he leaned forward and pulled something out of the drawer beside him, a yellowed envelope. I opened it. Inside was a photo. Me, standing in front of the house with a closed-mouth grin and a single key raised between my fingers. The day I bought it, he had printed it off, probably from one of my old Facebook posts, written on the back, in his handwriting, "Don't forget what was yours just because someone else couldn't handle it." I didn't say anything, just sat with that a while. On the way home, I drove past the house. I didn't slow down, didn't pull over, didn't check the mailbox. I just nodded once and kept driving. Truett didn't vanish. He escalated, and now I had to be ready for the war he'd been planning all along. She showed up uninvited. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The air was thick, and the blinds were drawn, keeping the rental as dim as I liked it. The doorbell rang once, then again. I opened it to see Mama standing there with a foil-covered dish in her hands and a sadness in her eyes I'd seen before. "I brought cobbler," she said. "Peach, your favorite." She stepped inside before I could tell her no. She moved through my space like she still had the right to, placed the dish on my counter like we were still close, like nothing had cracked wide open. "Don't turn into someone none of us recognize," she said, not looking at me. I leaned against the wall and folded my arms. She sat down, hands folded over each other. I didn't expect it to go this far. I didn't think she'd... "Well, you've always been the one who made things right." I didn't speak. "She's still your sister, Delston?" I finally asked. Was it ever really a family? Or was it just a cycle we never broke? She didn't answer, but her eyes welled up like that counted for something. After she left, I threw the cobbler in the trash. I didn't even open the lid. Some things you can't sweeten after the rot sets in. That Friday was my birthday. I didn't make plans. I silenced my phone. Walked along the water by myself with nothing but the gulls and the sound of leaves skipping across pavement. I watched the light change across the bay like it was painting its own goodbye. That night, I logged into Facebook to check messages, just to see. The first thing that popped up was a photo tagged of me. Except it wasn't me. It was Lurleen, standing in what used to be my kitchen. Balloons taped to the cabinets. A cake with pink icing. Her daughter blowing out candles. Her hand resting on Truett's shoulder. The caption, "Celebrating fresh starts with family." I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just saved the image, printed it, and slid it under the manila folder labeled "House Sale, Finalized." The next morning, my phone rang. "Zaida, your sister's trying to contest the sale," she said. I didn't even sigh. Then she paused. "I figured you should know something else. I didn't just refer the buyer. I was the buyer." My hand gripped the phone tighter. She explained everything, how she'd watched it all unfold, how she never forgot the way Lurleen humiliated her in high school, a spilled drink, a loud laugh, a room full of silence that turned its back on her. "I'm not one for revenge," Zeta said, "but justice? I can live with that. I'm going to turn that house into something good, something honest." I didn't say anything at first. Then, for the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real laugh. One that didn't taste like iron. Later that evening, I opened the last box from my old home. At the very bottom was a photo. Me, standing in front of the sold sign, holding a house key, smiling like the future had finally caught up to me. On the back, in my handwriting, "For my sister, always." I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it neatly, slid it into my wallet. I sat down, got back up, pulled it out, walked to the kitchen, lit a match, watched it burn in the sink, whispered, "I meant it then, but she broke it now." I lit a single candle by the window, not for a birthday, not for nostalgia, for clarity. And I watched it flicker against the night as I said aloud to no one, "Let the past stay locked where it belongs. But when the past knocks again, you'd better have new locks." The court didn't even blink. Truett's motion to reverse the sale was denied, flat out, final, no appeal pending, no hearings scheduled. It was over. I sat at the table in my rental kitchen, the official notice resting under my palm like something sacred. But it didn't feel like a win, just an end. I didn't smile. Didn't even call Zeta back right away. Instead, I folded the letter neatly, slipped it into a folder labeled Finals, and slid it under the rest. Zeta messaged me later that morning. That was the last domino. You're in the clear, I typed. Thanks. Then deleted it, then typed again. Appreciate you. Sent it that time. Truett and Lurleen vanished like they'd never been loud. No more calls, no more police reports, no more porch screaming, just gone. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still, like the dust had finally landed. Peace doesn't always come in trumpets and parades. Sometimes it arrives like silence. The neighborhood shifted, too. People who never asked me a thing before now found polite ways to stop by. A bag of lemons left on my porch. A note tucked in my mailbox that read, "We didn't know. We're sorry." I wasn't angry, just tired of apologies that showed up after the damage. Someone from the church down the road asked if I wanted to speak at their women's circle. Your strength, your story, people could learn from it, she said. I told her thank you, and that I wasn't ready. That was true. I didn't need to talk to feel heard anymore. Then one morning, old Mr. Purley waved me down as I got in my car. You left a bag of mail in your old box. Figured it might matter. He handed me a plastic grocery sack with loose envelopes stuffed inside. Most of it was junk. But one had my name, my address. Handwritten. No return label. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper. My father's handwriting, neat and slow. You were always the one who built, not just endured. Tucked with the note was a photo. Me, smiling, standing in front of the sold sign, holding up the key like I'd just won the lottery. It was the same photo I'd burned. He'd printed a copy from his own files, and written in the corner, in pen that shook but still spoke. Don't forget what was yours just because someone else couldn't handle it. I sat with that for a long time. Didn't cry, just breathed through it. Pressed the photo against my chest. I didn't need it back. But I was glad it found its way to me. I pinned it on the fridge, not as some trophy, just as a reminder that I had been there, that I had existed in that home, that space, that chapter, not for revenge, for record. That afternoon, I opened a draft email I'd written a dozen times and never sent. Subject line, closure. Message, I understand now. You never loved me. You just loved what I made easier. I didn't hit send, just saved it. That was enough. I sat down and wrote in my journal, not the digital one. The leather-bound one I kept locked away. I thought forgiveness would feel like a halo. It felt more like air, clean, thin, enough. That night, I rolled out a new welcome mat in front of my rental. No names, no initials, just a single word stitched across it. Welcome. This time, I'll only hand over the key to someone who brings their own peace.